It was early morning on May 17, 2005, when a 911 call came in from a quiet home in Alexandria, Kentucky. A woman was screaming. She said someone had broken in and shot her husband. When police got there, they found a house in complete disorder. Drawers were open, things were thrown everywhere, and glass from a broken door covered the floor. In the bedroom, they found a man's body. At first, it looked like a robbery gone wrong. But something didn't feel right. The story didn't add up. The kids remembered things differently. And then, police found something hidden deep inside the washing machine that changed everything. Robert Bob Bosley was born on August 2, 1962 in the quiet town of Alexandria, nestled in Campbell County, Kentucky. Raised in a religious, close-knit family alongside his siblings, Deborah, Henry Jr., and James, Bob showed signs early on of a sharp mind and ambitious spirit. While much of his early life remains undocumented, what is known is that even before reaching adulthood, Bob had already begun charting his own course. He had a vision to become wealthy and run his own business. Starting from the ground up, Bob offered chimney cleaning and small-scale roof repairs. With long days, modest pricing, and an impeccable work ethic, he slowly built a reputation as a dependable and friendly worker. His solo effort paid off. Over time, Bob transformed his one-man service into a thriving enterprise, Bosley Roofing and Chimney Sweep of Alexandria. Under his watchful eye, the company became known for quality, efficiency, and reliability, earning both loyal clients and impressive profits. With money pouring in, Bob set his sights even higher. He began acquiring rental properties, eventually owning around 20. These investments amplified his income, positioning him as one of the area's most successful businessmen. Wealth soon translated into lifestyle. Bob embraced luxury, sports cars, horses, an airplane, a sizable boat, and an arsenal of expensive firearms. His boat, often seen cruising Lake Cumberland, became infamous for its wild adult-only parties filled with alcohol, music, and scantily clad guests. It was at one of his favorite local restaurants where Bob met 18-year-old Amy Pave. Amy, also from Alexandria, came from humble beginnings. Born in 1969 into a working-class family, her life was shaped by financial limitations and a household affected by her father's struggle with alcohol. Still, Amy was determined to break the cycle. After graduating high school with top honors in 1986, she pursued business studies at a local community college connected to Northern Kentucky University. To fund her education, she worked as a waitress, where she crossed paths with Bob. He was older, wealthy, and charismatic. At first reserved, Amy soon found herself drawn into his world. She began attending his notorious lake parties, gradually becoming a regular fixture in his inner circle. But Amy didn't remain just another guest. She captured Bob's heart. Their relationship grew serious, and after 4 years together, the two were married. For Amy, it was the ultimate transformation. She had gone from modest roots to marrying one of the most sought-after bachelors in the region. Soon, the couple started a family. Their daughter Morgan was born in 1996, followed by a son, Trevor, 3 years later. Amy, once the carefree partygoer, shifted into the role of devoted mother. Her wild nights on the lake were replaced with school functions and parenting. Bob continued to expand his business and investments, but one area frustrated him: administration. Managing payroll, taxes, invoices, and contractors was a burden he resented. He preferred the freedom of the lake over the confines of an office. Weekends often saw him vanishing aboard his boat, sometimes for days, refusing to disclose his whereabouts. Friends later recalled that Bob had begun drifting away from his family, drawn back into a life of indulgence and secrecy. Some sources even claimed that he and Amy had an open relationship. Regardless of the truth, Bob eventually decided to merge his personal and professional life more closely. Since Amy had studied business administration, he asked her to take over the company's financial and administrative responsibilities. At first, Amy seemed hesitant, but eventually she agreed. From then on, she managed the company's books, payroll, and tax obligations. The business was booming, and the Bosleys appeared to be thriving. They lived in a rustic log cabin nestled in the woods south of Alexandria, a temporary residence while their dream home was being built nearby. A sprawling estate with 14 acres of land, complete with stained glass windows, a stone tower, and even Gothic gargoyles. To the outside world, the Bosleys embodied the American dream. They were attractive, successful, generous with their time, and deeply involved in their church and children's school activities. Bob often donated services to low-income families, and his name was respected throughout the community. But like many fairy tales, their story had a dark side. Behind the scenes, Amy's role as administrator gave her access to the full financial picture, and with Bob distracted by business expansion, the lake, and the Dream House project, Amy quietly began diverting company funds. Instead of paying the company's taxes, she rerouted the money into an undisclosed personal account. This embezzlement went unnoticed for years, but no one avoids the IRS forever. The Internal Revenue Service had been tracking the company's missing tax payments. They issued repeated letters, made calls, and even attempted to set up meetings. But Bob never received any of these warnings. That's because Amy had arranged for all IRS correspondence to be delivered to a private mailbox only she could access. She was well aware the government was closing in, but perhaps she believed she could keep stalling indefinitely. Everything changed on the morning of Tuesday, May 17, 2005, just days before the couple's 15th wedding anniversary. Around 5 a.m., a frantic 911 call came in from Amy Bosley. Her panicked voice filled the line, but the call was suddenly cut off by a loud crashing sound. Dispatchers tried to reconnect. Moments later, law enforcement was racing to the Bosley cabin. When officers arrived, they found Amy in shock, clutching her children. Her sister soon arrived to take the kids, while Amy was brought in for questioning. Police secured the scene and called in the crime scene unit. At first light, additional officers arrived to search the surrounding forest with K-9 units and even a helicopter, searching for what they believed was a fleeing intruder. Inside the bedroom, they discovered Bob's lifeless body. He was found kneeling by the side of the bed, slumped forward, riddled with gunshot wounds. Yet oddly, only 2 shell casings were found in the room, raising more questions than answers. Instead of bringing clarity, the investigation only deepened the mystery. And as detectives continued combing through the evidence, they began to suspect that the crime scene and perhaps the entire story wasn't what it seemed. Aside from the children's bedrooms, the entire house was in disarray. Kitchen cabinets stood wide open, including the ones beneath the sink, a strange place for a thief to search. A rear door had a broken window suggesting a possible point of entry, but curiously, most of the shattered glass was found outside, not inside, an inconsistency that raised eyebrows from the start. The signs of disorder continued throughout the house. In the bathroom, the mirrored cabinet was open and prescription bottles were scattered across the floor. It looked more like staged chaos than the aftermath of a fast, focused intruder. And based on the 911 call made by Amy, the alleged assailant had fled quickly. So why the mess? While crime scene investigators worked through the house, detectives began questioning Amy Bosley at the station. She appeared shaken, distraught at times, but often confused, as if struggling to keep her story straight. She described the intruder as a white male with a nasal voice, bad breath, and a distinct odor of urine. According to Amy, he had burst in during the night and attacked both her and Bob. She displayed 2 marks on her chest, claiming they were from the assault. When asked who might have wanted to harm Bob, Amy floated the idea that he wasn't well-liked, suggesting he had a wild reputation and might have made enemies among disgruntled employees. She specifically named Noah Heim, a contractor and longtime friend of Bob, as someone who had recently argued with him. But Noah was quickly ruled out. He had a solid alibi and was deeply affected by Bob's death. Meanwhile, panic rippled through the Alexandria community. Schools were closed for several days as fear of a killer on the loose took hold. Neighbors couldn't reconcile the idea that someone as kind and generous as Bob, known to give the shirt off his back, had been brutally gunned down in his own home. Back at the cabin, detectives searched for answers. Only 2 shell casings were recovered near Bob's body, despite multiple gunshot wounds. That led investigators to expand their search to the basement. There, inside the family's washing machine, they found soaked clothing, and at the bottom, a folded cloth containing 4 additional shell casings. Why would a fleeing killer take the time to hide evidence in a washer inside the victim's home? It didn't make sense. Even stranger, an aluminum baseball bat was found nearby with fresh scratches and white residue. Lab analysis would be needed to determine its significance. For now, Amy was released and allowed to reunite with her children. But the puzzle pieces were falling into place. The crime scene appeared staged. Valuables, including stacks of cash, were left untouched. Amy's emotional display seemed hollow, no tears, no real grief. Investigators suspected there was more beneath the surface. And then came the breakthrough. Staff from the IRS visited the station after hearing about Bob's death. They had been trying for months to contact him regarding a massive unpaid tax bill, over $1.7 million. A meeting had been scheduled for the very day Bob was found dead. The IRS agents also revealed something bizarre. During a previous call, they had spoken to someone who claimed to be Bob, but the voice was strange, high-pitched, and clearly unnatural. To them, it sounded like a woman pretending to be a man. That voice had been Amy's. Now, the motive was clear. Amy, entrusted with the company's finances, had siphoned off hundreds of thousands of dollars, diverting tax payments into her own private account. Bob, who had no idea what was happening, was about to discover the truth just as the IRS prepared to confront him face to face. Adding to the tension were Bob's alleged affairs. His sister later told investigators she once overheard Amy say that if Bob ever cheated or left her, she would shoot him. At the time, it sounded like a joke. Now, it sounded like a promise. Despite mounting evidence, Amy Bosley continued to deny any involvement in her husband's murder. During her second interrogation, she insisted she loved Bob even if their marriage wasn't perfect. She admitted they had their problems, what couple didn't, but claimed there was no reason she would ever harm the father of her children. But investigators saw a different picture. Ballistics testing confirmed that all 6 bullets that struck Bob matched the 6 casings collected, 2 in the bedroom and 4 hidden in the washing machine. Then came a pivotal moment in the investigation. Interviews with Morgan and Trevor Bosley, ages 9 and 6. Questioned separately, both children gave identical accounts. They had gone to sleep peacefully, only to be startled awake by 6 gunshots. Then they heard glass shattering. Amy's version of events had the order reversed, first the glass breaking, then the shots. Her story was unraveling. Even the scratches on her chest, presented as injuries from a struggle with the intruder, were suspicious. The marks were too symmetrical, more like staged wounds than defensive injuries. Further examination of her blouse revealed that it hadn't been torn during the alleged attack. It had been carefully cut with scissors, then ripped to appear damaged. Less than 2 weeks after Bob's murder, authorities arrested Amy Bosley and formally charged her with his homicide. One crucial piece was still missing, the murder weapon. That, too, eventually surfaced, though how it was discovered remains disputed. According to one account, a pistol from Bob's own gun collection was found hidden in Amy's handbag, tucked behind a wardrobe. A second version claims the weapon was discovered later by Amy's sister, who had taken custody of her children and belongings that night. While sorting through Amy's purse, she allegedly found the gun and immediately contacted a lawyer who turned it over to police. Regardless of how it was recovered, ballistic testing confirmed the gun matched the 6 casings found at the crime scene and in the laundry. The bullets inside Bob's body were too damaged to confirm a direct match, but the circumstantial case was overwhelming. As the trial began, prosecutors painted a clear and damning narrative. For years, Amy had secretly bled Bob's company dry, diverting tax payments and pocketing the money. She kept the IRS at bay through mail redirection and deception, but her luck had run out. On the morning of May 17, 2005, Bob was scheduled to meet with IRS agents who were demanding answers. Amy knew what that meeting meant: exposure, divorce, prison. And so, the once respected wife, mother, and community volunteer devised a desperate plan. The night before the IRS meeting, with her children sleeping nearby and her husband unaware, Amy quietly retrieved one of Bob's firearms. Some reports even suggest she sedated the children beforehand. Standing at his bedside while he slept, she fired. Bob, wounded, but not immediately killed, awoke and tried to stop her. According to investigators, the trajectory of his injuries indicated that he lunged toward the attacker, only to realize too late that the gun was in Amy's hands. Stunned, bleeding, and betrayed, Bob couldn't overpower her. She fired again. By the time it was over, the man who had built a fortune from scratch, who had trusted Amy with everything, lay dead in the home they were building for their future. And the woman who once stood by his side now stood accused of orchestrating his execution, not out of fear, but out of greed. Amy Bosley's carefully constructed life of luxury and respect had collapsed in a single night of cold calculation. What remained was a shattered family, a stunned community, and a legacy of betrayal that would never be forgotten. She shattered the rear glass door with a baseball bat, tore through cabinets and drawers to simulate a burglary, then hid 4 spent casings wrapped in a cloth at the bottom of the washing machine. To make her wounds appear credible, Amy lightly cut her chest with what was likely scissors, then slashed her blouse to simulate a struggle. She ended her performance with a desperate 911 call, her voice frantic, the scene staged. Forensic evidence told a different story. Lab analysis confirmed that glass fragments on the aluminum bat matched the broken rear door. The bat, identified by her children as belonging to the family, had not been wielded by an intruder, but used as a prop by Amy herself. Police found no footprints, no vehicle tracks, no sign of anyone matching the description Amy gave. No outsider had come or gone that night. Meanwhile, investigators uncovered the truth about the Bosleys' marriage. Amy was convinced Bob had been unfaithful. Photos retrieved from the couple's safe, taken during wild parties on Lake Cumberland, revealed a second life and confirmed at least one extramarital affair. But while betrayal may have burned, the motive went far deeper. Amy's secret was unraveling. She had embezzled nearly $2 million from her husband's company by failing to pay taxes and diverting the money elsewhere. The IRS had scheduled a meeting with Bob for the morning after his murder, one that would have exposed everything. Killing him, Amy believed, would bury the secret. With Bob gone, his assets would cover the debt and she could walk away with the rest. But the children's testimony, hearing the gunshots before the glass shattered, destroyed her timeline. And though the defense claimed the bullet casings could have been dropped from Bob's own pockets after visiting the shooting range, the evidence piled up. Still, Amy's attorney argued there were no witnesses, no DNA, and no definitive link between the casings and the bullets in Bob's body. With enough ambiguity, they might sway the jury. Fearing Amy might walk free and unwilling to force the Bosley children to testify against their mother, prosecutors offered a plea deal. Amy would avoid a trial, spare her children the trauma, and receive a reduced sentence. In exchange, she admitted guilt without ever revealing what she had done with the stolen millions. On November 2, 2006, Amy Bosley entered a Campbell County courtroom in a green and white prison jumpsuit. Her demeanor was unreadable. Before sentencing, Bob's family addressed her directly. His brother James called her a liar and a fraud, warning that while she might one day enjoy freedom, she would never escape the memories. He reminded her that every night she would see Bob's face and the tears of the children she orphaned. Deborah, Bob's sister, stared at Amy as she asked the one question that haunted them all. Did he beg you to stop? No one would ever know. Then came Bob's mother, Audrey, heartbroken and trembling, reading a letter filled with grief over a final goodbye that never came. Amy sat silent, eyes on the floor, wiping away tears. The judge, bound by the plea agreement, condemned the damage Amy had done, not only to her husband, but to her children, her community, and her own future. He sentenced her to 20 years in prison. Under Kentucky law, she became eligible for parole after serving 85% of her sentence. That meant 17 years behind bars. On May 17, 2022, exactly 17 years after Bob's murder, Amy Bosley, then 54 years old, walked out of the Kentucky Correctional Institution for Women. Most news outlets barely noted her release. Her current whereabouts remain unknown, but some believe she may have gone in search of the millions she once siphoned away. As for Bob, his final resting place is St. Stephen's Cemetery in Campbell County, Kentucky, a man remembered for his generosity, ambition, and devotion to family, cut down by the very person he trusted most. In hindsight, Amy's actions seemed both tragic and senseless. She wasn't destitute. Her husband wasn't cruel. The IRS might have worked out a settlement. And if her motive was revenge, a divorce might have left her richer and free. But instead, she chose murder. And as the old American proverb goes, one made famous by Benjamin Franklin, nothing is certain except death and taxes. In Amy Bosley's case, both came knocking. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, do subscribe to my channel and tell me in the comments from where the world are you watching my video. Also subscribe to my channel. Your support means a lot to me. In the city of Aurora, Colorado, Angela Craig was loved for her warm smile and dedication to her family. As a mother of 6, her life seemed perfect, especially with her husband James Craig by her side, but behind their happy appearance, there were dark secrets waiting to come out. Angela's sudden health problems set off a shocking investigation that revealed lies, betrayal, and a deadly plan created by the very person she trusted the most. Angela was born on April 15, 1975, in the bustling town of Dodge City, Kansas. She grew up as a beloved member of a large family with 10 children. Known for her wit, intelligence, and her ability to engage in captivating conversations, Angela was always the heart of any gathering. Her love for animals, despite her allergies, was evident throughout her life, and she also had a deep passion for reading and woodworking. As a student of interior design, Angela found beauty in creating and arranging living spaces. However, her most important priority was always her family. She maintained strong relationships with her siblings and was quick to offer a helping hand to friends and even strangers. Angela's passion for genealogy led her to become a family history consultant where she helped people reconnect with distant relatives. She was also highly active in her church, serving as a choir director, teacher, and youth group leader. On December 18, 1999, Angela married James Craig, a man with dreams of becoming a doctor. In 2006, those dreams became a reality when James earned his doctorate in dental surgery from the University of Missouri, Kansas City. While at the university, James played a key role in establishing the International Dental Program, assisting foreign-born dentists in obtaining their licenses in the United States. By October 2006, James began practicing in Aurora, Colorado, and over the span of 23 years, Angela and James welcomed 6 children into their family. Despite the physical distance, Angela remained close with her siblings, especially her sister, Toni, who lived in Utah. The two spoke on the phone daily and made time for many memorable trips together. With James' dental practice and Angela's deep involvement in the local community, the Craig family seemed happy and content. However, life took an unexpected turn on March 15, 2023, at 11 a.m. when Angela was rushed to the hospital suffering from a debilitating headache, dizziness, and nausea. James was by her side, providing support during the frightening ordeal. Despite the medical team's efforts, Angela's condition worsened by 2 p.m. when she suffered a severe seizure. Doctors acted quickly, placing her on life support as her concerned family sought answers. This was Angela's 3rd hospital visit in just 10 days, with recurring symptoms of headache, nausea, and dizziness, yet no clear cause had been identified. This time, however, her condition was far more serious, leaving the medical team puzzled. As Angela's condition deteriorated, 2 close friends, Ryan Redfern and his wife, arrived at the hospital. Ryan, a fellow dentist and James' longtime friend from their university days, was also a financial partner in James' dental practice. In 2021, when James faced financial challenges, Ryan stepped in to help save the practice. His wife, who held a doctorate in nursing, was aware of Angela's recent health struggles and wanted to offer support. Angela's symptoms had first appeared on March 5, 2023, after returning from a visit to her sister in Utah. Feeling unwell, she sought medical attention on March 6, but the doctors found nothing alarming, prescribing her standard medication and recommending rest. However, Angela's condition worsened, leading to another hospital visit on March 9, raising concern among her friends. On March 9, While Angela was hospitalized, Ryan's wife reached out to James, offering her help. James, though appreciative, assured her that they had things under control at the moment. The next day, March 10th, Ryan's wife followed up, checking in to see if there had been any progress in Angela's diagnosis and offering her assistance again. James, grateful for her concern, acknowledged how challenging the situation had been, marking the beginning of a critical chapter in Angela's health journey. James expressed his growing concern as the doctors had conducted numerous tests, including several blood draws. Thankfully, the regular blood tests came back normal, ruling out autoimmune disorders and diabetes. The main issue at the time seemed to be Angela's blood pressure. Over the course of 24 hours, she had been given 5 liters of 4 fluids, but her blood pressure remained alarmingly low. Despite the medical interventions, Angela still felt quite unwell. The doctors decided to keep her in the hospital for another night, hoping that she could return home the following day. Over the next few days, Ryan's wife continued to check in on Angela's health, offering unwavering support. James shared that additional tests had been run, including an MRI due to a family history of brain tumors, as well as ultrasounds and CT scans of her head, chest, and abdomen. Surprisingly, all these tests came back normal, and there didn't seem to be any medical explanation for her declining health. Without clear answers, Angela was eventually allowed to go home, but a troubling question remained. If all the medical reports showed Angela was perfectly healthy, why was her condition deteriorating by the day? Unfortunately, on March 15, 2023, Angela's health took a sharp turn for the worse. This time, her symptoms were even more severe. She was struggling with extreme dizziness, nausea, and severe stomach pain. Unable to reach James, who was at his clinic, Angela called her brother for help. He rushed her to the hospital where she was admitted around 11 a.m. Upon receiving the alarming news, James hurried to be by his wife's side. In the midst of this crisis, James contacted his partner's wife to share the distressing update and even sent her 2 photos of Angela in the hospital room. Surrounded by medical professionals, Angela suffered a stroke and became unresponsive. Deeply concerned, Ryan and his wife decided to visit the hospital. They sent James a message to let him know they were on their way to offer support during this uncertain time. While en route to the hospital, Ryan received a troubling call from Caitlin, a relatively new office manager at the place where James worked. Caitlin had noticed some odd occurrences that raised questions about Angela's health. She shared an incident that took place on March 6, 2023. Caitlin had been working late at the dental office when James unexpectedly showed up, despite not having any patients scheduled. What struck Caitlin as odd was that instead of heading to his own office, James went down the hall to use a computer in one of the exam rooms. This was unusual because James typically used his own computer in his office, and this deviation from his normal routine seemed strange. About 30 minutes after Caitlin left the office, she received a text message from James. In the message, James mentioned that he was expecting a personal package to be delivered to the office and asked Caitlin to ensure it was received. He emphasized that no one else should open it. March 13, 2023, the package James had mentioned finally arrived. However, when Caitlin went to pick it up, she discovered that a colleague had already opened it. Remembering James's request for confidentiality, Caitlin resealed the package and handed it directly to James. While repackaging it, something unusual caught her eye. A hazardous material label. The label was affixed to a cylindrical container marked with the words potassium cyanide. Caitlin assumed the chemical might have some medical or dental use she wasn't familiar with, so she resealed the box and quickly gave it to James. Later that day, she noticed James leaving the office, clutching the cylindrical container wrapped in brown paper. Her suspicions deepened. Why was James taking potassium cyanide home? Curious, Caitlin turned to Google to investigate the uses of potassium cyanide. That's when she stumbled upon a shocking discovery. The symptoms of potassium cyanide poisoning closely resembled those Angela had been experiencing. As Angela's condition worsened, with symptoms like nausea, vomiting, and low blood pressure, Ryan arrived at the hospital, still in shock from what Caitlin had told him. He met up with his wife, and together they went to see Angela, who was now on life support. Without wasting any time, Ryan approached one of the nurses on duty, sharing his suspicion that Angela might have been poisoned by James with potassium cyanide. Though taken aback by the unexpected information, the nurse took the claim seriously and agreed to conduct a new round of tests on Angela. Aware of the gravity of the situation, the nurse also dialed 911 to alert the authorities. Meanwhile, James stepped outside to take a phone call, giving Ryan and his wife an opportunity to leave the hospital. However, their departure was interrupted by a frantic call from James, demanding to know why they had left and informing them that the hospital staff suspected he had poisoned his wife. Ryan didn't hold back. He was upfront with James, confronting him about the mysterious package delivered to the dental office and the unsettling contents. He directly asked James why he had ordered potassium cyanide. Backed into a corner, James finally admitted that he had indeed purchased the chemical, but he claimed that Angela had asked him to do so, never imagining she would use it. After the tense phone call, James texted Ryan, pleading with him not to share their conversation with anyone, especially the police. He expressed concern that Ryan's involvement would only harm his family further. James acknowledged Ryan's motivations, but insisted that if Ryan had come to him directly, man to man, rather than involving others, they might have avoided the current chaos. His frustration and anger toward Ryan were palpable. Ryan, however, couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Angela's deteriorating health. He made a crucial decision and contacted the police, sharing everything he knew and urging them to investigate further. Later that night, well past midnight, the police arrived at the hospital to discuss Angela's dire condition. She remained on life support with no brain activity. The next day, on March 16, 2023, investigators visited Caitlin, the office manager. That's when the truth began to unravel. Caitlin revealed that on the morning of March 6, 2023, before Angela's first hospital visit, James had prepared a pre-workout protein shake for her. He proudly mentioned it at the office, portraying himself as a caring husband. However, things took a sinister turn when Angela suddenly became dizzy, and from that moment on, her health rapidly declined. Caitlin didn't hold back, also discussing the suspicious package and her concerns about the potassium cyanide. She explained how this lethal chemical could produce the same symptoms Angela had been experiencing, and in some cases, could be fatal. Ryan, who had joined the conversation at the dental clinic, added more to the story, shattering the image of the seemingly happy Craig family. He disclosed that in 2021, when James was facing financial troubles and the threat of bankruptcy, he had confided in Ryan about his marital problems. Shockingly, at that time, James had been contemplating divorce. Even more heartbreaking was James' later admission that Angela had contemplated ending her life in 2022 through an overdose, but James had intervened to save her. According to Ryan, James claimed that Angela's self-harming tendencies became more pronounced when he asked for a divorce in December 2022. Despite these serious issues, James never reported any of Angela's behavior to the authorities or sought professional help for her mental health. This pattern of secrecy and neglect raised serious questions about recent events. To get a clearer picture of Angela's mental state, the police interviewed the couple's 6 children. Surprisingly, they painted a different picture, describing their mother as happy and full of energy with no signs of the troubling behavior James had mentioned. This contradiction only deepened the mystery and suggested that James might have been fabricating a story to explain Angela's worsening health. As suspicion mounted against James, the police launched a full investigation. They obtained search warrants for both the Craig residence and James' dental office. They also began reviewing James' phone records and text conversations with Angela, dating back to March 6, 2023, the day she first reported feeling unwell. The text messages from that day revealed a disturbing exchange. Angela expressed her appreciation for a coffee James had made for, showing affection and optimism for the day. However, soon after, she mentioned feeling dizzy and off, prompting James to suggest she check her blood pressure. The conversation took a troubling turn when James referenced heavy medications and acknowledged his past concerns, hinting at a possible trigger for Angela. He voiced concern about her symptoms, comparing them to those of a stroke, and asked about any weakness she might have been experiencing. This unsettling exchange combined with the other evidence left investigators with more questions than answers. Following the unsettling exchange between James and Angela, where he continued asking about her symptoms and offering suggestions, a troubling level of awareness and concern over her condition became apparent. The investigation took a significant turn when the police decided to inspect James' computer. They uncovered 2 email accounts linked to him, along with a disturbing search history related to Angela's declining health, raising more suspicions about his involvement. In February, just a month before Angela was hospitalized, James had searched terms like, "How many grams of pure arsenic does it take to kill a human, and can arsenic be detected in an autopsy?" He had also looked up chemical suppliers in the city, all of which raised red flags during the investigation. One particularly damning piece of evidence was a purchase made by James on Amazon for a product labeled as 99.999% crystalline metalloid arsenic. The product description explicitly stated that ingesting this chemical could be fatal. Further probing into James' online activity revealed alarming YouTube videos he had watched. One video titled, "Top 5 Undetectable Poisons That Don't Show Signs of Murder," provided instructions on how to create plant-based poisons. He also conducted 3 more searches related to homemade poison making, specifically from plants. As if that weren't disturbing enough, the investigators found another video detailing the effects of cyanide and arsenic poisoning, highlighting how difficult it is for doctors to detect these substances. The most incriminating piece of evidence came in the form of an order James placed for potassium cyanide. At this point, the puzzle pieces were coming together. It was becoming clear that James had been poisoning Angela all along. But why would someone poison his wife and the mother of his children? Was it related to his desire for a divorce? As investigators dug deeper, they interviewed friends and family members. Angela's sister provided critical insight. She revealed that only those closest to Angela knew the truth about her marriage with James, which was far from the loving facade they presented to the world. She disclosed that James had a history of extramarital affairs with multiple women. Even more shocking, James had confessed to Angela about his addiction to inappropriate online material since his teenage years. One particularly disturbing incident from 5 or 6 years earlier caught the attention of the police. The woman recalled Angela telling her that she feared James had deliberately drugged her. Angela suspected that James had drugged her in order to prevent her from intervening in his activities, shedding light on some of the strange text messages between the couple. However, police remained skeptical of James' explanation about drugging Angela, finding it unreasonable that he would resort to such extreme measures. She also shared that Angela had longed to escape her marriage, a sentiment she had expressed repeatedly over the past 16 years. Yet, every time Angela gathered the courage to leave, James would skillfully manipulate her into staying. Their marital issues extended beyond their personal relationship and into James's struggling dental practice. Further complicating the situation, James had tried his luck gambling in Las Vegas, losing over $2,000 despite being in $2 million of debt. To the police, it became clear that beneath the surface of their seemingly perfect marriage, the Craig household was rife with turmoil. The investigation uncovered even more damning evidence when they found emails detailing round-trip flights from 2 separate occasions. These tickets were reserved for Karen, an orthodontist based in Texas. The emails between Karen and James were far from professional. Their tone was intimate. Karen had filed for divorce in 2022 and had been in a relationship with James, something Angela knew nothing about. Digging deeper, investigators found that these flights were purchased on the same day arsenic was delivered to James' home. This suggested a calculated plan for James to be with Karen on March 16. One of Karen's emails to James with the subject line, "See you soon," expressed her regret over the events happening in James' life that week. She apologized for not being a part of his world and for keeping her distance. As police gathered more evidence against James, hospital staff fought to save Angela. Tragically, on March 18 at 4:29 p.m., Angela was declared brain dead. She passed away without ever knowing the truth about what her husband had been plotting. Just hours after Angela was removed from life support, James was officially charged with first-degree premeditated murder. He didn't have much time to reflect on the charges because, on March 19th, he was arrested. A few days later, James found himself in a Colorado courtroom for his initial appearance. As the charges against him were read aloud, a mix of friends, family, and even some of James and Angela's children watched in shock. The disheveled 45-year-old man in an orange jumpsuit, handcuffed, was a far cry from the smiling blonde man seen in family photos. James Craig, already facing the grave charge of first-degree murder, was also hit with a second charge, tampering with physical evidence. The judge set James' bail at a staggering $10 million. His trial is set for December 2024. A week after Angela's death, new information emerged, revealing that she had not one, but 3 life insurance policies in her name. While it's not confirmed, this raised the chilling possibility that collecting those life insurance payouts might have been part of James' grim plan, along with his affair. Now, Angela's 6 children are left to grapple with the devastating reality of losing their mother while their father stands trial for her murder. Angela's children were her pride and joy, and following James's arrest, Angela's family stepped in to care for them. They made it clear that James's extended family should not be held responsible for his terrible actions. In Angela's obituary, her family and loved ones tried to capture the essence of her life beyond the tragedy of her untimely death. When Angela was declared brain dead, her family made the brave decision to donate her organs. While they couldn't save her, they found bittersweet comfort in knowing that her legacy lives on through the lives she helped save.
In this video, we uncover a true crime story so shocking and twisted that no Hollywood movie could ever top it. Truth be told, the web is one of the most dangerous places. Scammers, hackers, and bugs can all steal private data through pop-up ads and hackers. These are all small things. People are the real danger. The people behind all scams are real, but they act like someone else. Most scary is that every day, innocent and easy-to-target internet users fall for their tricks, hoping to get rich quick, meet a good-looking person, or just for fun. All con artists are skilled at taking advantage of people's feelings. It's possible to be smart and still fall for a scam. We all want to think that we're too smart to be fooled and will never fall for a con artist's tricks. But the truth is that anyone can be lied to. Find the right way to get to their heart and then use their flaws against them. The person who was hurt in this case couldn't even imagine that someone hundreds of miles away who she had never met had already chosen she had to die. If you had $9 million, what would you do? Would you take that amount from an unknown person? Would it even occur to you that someone could simply give away so much? Think for a moment and tell me the value of a human life. For $9 million, would you be willing to take a life? Cynthia Hoffman primarily noticed the positive aspects of individuals. She would return a smile if someone smiled at her. She was quick to offer assistance to anyone in need. She was always friendly, trustworthy, and eager to be a part of something greater. So if someone talked to her about friendship, she thought of that person as a friend. Cynthia Hoffman was born in Anchorage, Alaska on October 8, 1999. Her loved ones called her Cece. Cynthia was the middle child of Barbara and Timothy Hoffman's big, boisterous, and devoted family. She had 3 brothers and 3 sisters, but she adored her father above all else. Clearly, Cynthia was a daddy's daughter. Cynthia assisted her father with his work on the weekends, while other children hung out at malls or were glued to their phones. Timothy's daughter was his right-hand assistant, and he was a multi-talented man. She gave him tools if he was repairing a fence. She was usually close by, willing to help, support, or get something if he was fixing a motorbike. Being brought up with virtues like empathy and compassion, Cynthia was a devoted friend who was always available to help others in need. Compared to his previous children, Tim showed Cynthia more affection, and that was for a cause. Due to a mild developmental delay, the girl had an innocent, childlike perspective on the world. Tim didn't want anyone to exploit Cynthia's weakness because he was aware that not everyone was well-meaning. He made an effort to protect his daughter from untruthful friends and challenging circumstances when she was a child. The Hoffman family settled in Anchorage, Alaska, where the untamed grandeur of nature coexisted with urban life. The city is well known for its tight-knit community, varied dining options, and quaint coffee shops. But there's another planet just beyond the busy city streets. The horizon is covered with mountains, thick woods, and a great deal of wilderness. The disparity of the seasons was peacefully accepted by Cynthia's family, who cherished Anchorage. The Hoffmans loved being outside and hiking on rocky paths. They also treasured the peaceful routine moments that comprised their life. Cynthia spent a lot of time studying and exploring her future as a teenager, but she also loved being outside. She went through a specific program after high school to acquire useful skills that would aid her in her father's business. Cynthia, on the other hand, was immensely proud of herself after finding a job at a nearby restaurant quite fast because she craved independence. She loved making a life on her own and getting to know new people. The girl made an effort to be self-sufficient, but her father continued to be her primary provider. He made sure his daughter felt appreciated, valued, and safe in every way. His protective instincts were heightened by Cynthia's developmental delay. Timothy supported his daughter's ambition to reach her full potential while simultaneously trying to protect her from the harsh realities of the outside world. Cynthia, in turn, looked to her father as a personal friend and mentor. She messaged him frequently just to let him know what was going on in her life and to express her thoughts and feelings. Tim would always listen. She knew Cynthia's greatest desire was for her father to be pleased with her. In everything she did, her will to succeed was evident. Cynthia loved her relationship with her father, but she truly desired something more. She desired to engage more with her contemporaries and make friends outside of her family. She yearned for acceptance, friendship, and a feeling of community. Just like other teenagers, her childhood wish of having a best friend was eventually fulfilled one day. High school was where it all began. At a shopping center, two adolescent girls happened to meet. Their common interests, sense of humor, and attitude on life led to their rapid bonding. Hoffman and Denali Bramer went to the same high school. Cynthia felt happy and confident that she could now confide in someone other than her father because of her friendship with a peer. Denali, who was born Denali Dakota Sky Bramer, had a rough upbringing. Tragedy was the beginning of her aware life. Her original mother Nicole House gave birth to twins Karan and Gabrielle when she was just 2 years old. The babies cried all the time, and one of the twins died as a result of an act that their mother's new partner did in a fit of wrath. He seized the girls, slammed them together, and flung them onto a bed. Corey and somehow survived while Gabrielle collapsed awkwardly on the ground. It was all in front of Denali. Bramer's later life was influenced by this unfortunate incident. Nicole, her mother, lost custody as a result, and the girl was taken in by another family. Denali, who was raised by her adoptive parents, understood what it was like to feel different and alienated. The two teenagers may have genuinely understood one another because of this. They presented themselves as two inseparable girls who did everything together on social media. Together they danced, laughed, and commemorated significant occasions. Best friends forever is written in the captions of their pictures. Yet what people share online is rarely accurate. The girls disagreed, as do most friends. Common adolescent arguments, primarily involving boys. Denali and Cynthia frequently competed with one another since they each desired love and attention from the other. The girls often fell in love with the same men. It was the usual drama of high school. They quickly resolved their differences and resumed their shared laughter and enjoyment. Online, Denali frequently used pseudonyms. She liked to pretend to be different people. She seemed to be able to escape her past thanks to this. She was given the name Denali Dakota Sky Bramer following her adoption. When she was a teenager, Cynthia's father, Tim, preferred to call her Angel. Bramer spent a lot of time with Cynthia and was a regular visitor to the Hoffman residence. Together, they worked on school projects or watched films. Given that his daughter regarded Denali as her best friend, Tim recognized the significance of their bond. However, Cynthia wasn't always treated like a friend by Denali. She actually frequently stopped her, made fun of her speech patterns, and once made fun of her outright. Cynthia didn't appear to notice, or maybe she didn't want to. Furthermore, she swiftly changed the subject and smoothed over the painful times by saying something kind to Cynthia each time Denali made her feel uneasy. All Hoffman wanted was to maintain the friendship, so she held on to those comments. Denali was aware of this. She had excellent people skills and knew how to achieve what she wanted. The girl had learned to overcome obstacles and defend herself from an early age. Timothy Hoffman secretly dreaded this friendship because he knew his trusting, weak daughter would be easily duped, misled, or mistreated. Ever since Cynthia was born, this had been his worst dread. Cynthia was 19 years old in 2019. She was at the developmental stage of a 7th grader. In retrospect, it's easy to say that Denali's lack of concern for Cynthia's welfare was evident in numerous ways. She forced Hoffman to repeatedly ask for her approval. She vowed to be friends forever one day, and the next she could pretend Cynthia didn't exist by ignoring calls and texts. Denali was in control of this game. She chose when she would feel like an outsider and when her companion would feel needed. Cynthia tried everything she could to win Bramer's favor, without even realizing she was being manipulated. She would stop at nothing to please Denali. Then, however, something altered. Bramer began to behave differently. The girl was glued to her phone all the time, laughing over something, but she never told Cynthia why she was feeling so happy. Unable to contain herself, Denali confided in her buddy about a boy one day. She claimed that he was extremely wealthy, attractive, and flawless. She then displayed a picture of him from a social media account. In front of a high-end vehicle stood a handsome young man in his 20s. Denali claimed to be completely enamored with her. Cynthia believed whatever her friend stated, so she never questioned anything. In actuality, Hoffman felt excluded when Bramer texted her ideal partner, but she still saw Denali as her best friend. She always believed that they would educate themselves together, get employment, and stay friends for the rest of their lives. It was meant to be a typical summer day on June 2, 2019. That evening, Tim anticipated that his daughter would visit his office to collect payment for a recent work they completed together. Cynthia was supposed to meet with the father to talk about the next project, but she never did. Tim didn't give it much thought at first. Perhaps she lost track of time while she was with pals. However, Tim attempted to call his daughter as the minutes stretched into hours. He repeatedly dialed her number, but received no answer. Cynthia always picked up no matter where she was or what she was doing, so this wasn't like her. Answering calls was an unwritten family norm. Always, each Hoffman family member owned a cell phone. They were also aware that you had to answer Tim's call or return his call right away. Since they knew Tim didn't call for no reason, nobody in the family disregarded the father's calls. The message was not answered by Cynthia. "Is everything okay either?" Timothy made an effort to comfort himself by reminding himself that his daughter was a 19-year-old adult attempting to become independent. "She'd give you a call back." However, the fatherly instinct that had led him through every phase of Cynthia's existence continued to tell him that something had happened to his daughter. As the night wore on and the quiet deepened, Timothy made the decision to take a brief nap in the hopes that his daughter would call him in the morning and explain the circumstances, but he was unable to fall asleep. The father was plagued by a persistent sense of uneasiness. Tim's concern grew on June 3rd, the next day, when Cynthia had still not returned his calls or answered any messages. He was worried about her safety. He called Denali first thing in the morning. Her dearest buddy would have been the first to know what had transpired. Bramer immediately picked up and informed Tim that she had dropped Cynthia off at the playground with the polar bears after they had been hanging out with yesterday. As a child, Hoffman loved playing there, and as an adult, she frequently visited with friends. What Cynthia might have been doing there by herself was beyond Tim's comprehension. His daughter detested being by herself. In other words, she had a meeting scheduled. With whom was the question? She was terrified of getting lost, so she would never go anywhere by herself. Regretfully, Denali was unaware of her friend's intentions. However, Tim was positive that Cynthia had suffered a terrible fate. He began phoning every classmate in contact he could recall for his daughter. However, nobody had spotted the girl. The man had no intention of waiting for Cynthia to show up. In search of his daughter, he mounted his motorbike. Tim's first destination was the park with the polar bear playground. It was a 300-acre park. Its playground, which got its name from a structure built like a polar bear, was one of its features. The man looked for his daughter in the park. He repeatedly called her name, but nobody answered. Tim continued to communicate with Denali throughout this period, and she also voiced her worries regarding her friend's absence. It was the girl's hope that Cynthia would get home safely. Although Tim was extremely appreciative of everyone's help, it was insufficient to bring his daughter back. He immediately went to the Anchorage police station after leaving the park to report the missing person. The father didn't think Cynthia could disappear completely, as though she had just disappeared. Even parents of grown children are afraid of losing them. However, Timothy's terror was amplified multiple times due to Cynthia's weaknesses. It was the father's worst nightmare come true. In desperation, Timothy rallied all of his friends and acquaintances as the police started their search, and they searched the city streets, thick woodlands, and twisting highways on foot and on motorcycles. In an effort to locate Cynthia, volunteers searched every nook and cranny for any clues or signs. The police knocked on Nicole House's door that same day. Denali had lately gotten back in touch with her birth mother, whom she had reconnected with as an adult. Nicole claimed to have some information about Cynthia's disappearance and called the police to beg them to visit her home. The officer was intrigued by Denali's call because she was probably the last person to see Hoffman. Additionally, Nicole's testimony altered the direction of the inquiry. The woman claimed that her daughter had visited her the night before with a young man called Darren Schillmiller. Denali was sobbing uncontrollably and hysterically that her mother was unable to understand what she was saying. After calming down a little, her daughter told Nicole a story that was so implausible that the mother initially believed it to be a bad joke. She just couldn't accept that such a thing could actually occur. According to Denali, Cynthia was shot by Darren, the man she accompanied, and her body was subsequently tossed into a river. Nicole assumed the teenagers were exaggerating or spouting gibberish, so she didn't trust a word of it. The woman assumed the confession was a joke because the male was laughing. However, Nicole called the police right away after learning that Cynthia Hoffman was missing when she woke up the following morning. When Denali Bramer claimed to have dropped Cynthia off at the park and not seen her since, she was actually lying to Timothy. When the girl texted Tim to wish for his daughter's safe return home, she was actually well aware of what had occurred to her buddy. The Hoffman family would be haunted by the cold and premeditated deception for the rest of their lives, because Denali knew Cynthia would never return home. Detectives took Denali Dakota Skybramer, aged 21, to the police station on June 4th for a formal interrogation. The girl immediately confessed when they inquired what had happened to her companion. It all began with a straightforward statement. Bramer asked Hoffman if she would want to go hiking on the morning of June 2nd. The phrase hike was a code word for using marijuana among their group of pals. Cynthia concurred. For someone close to her, she would stop at nothing. She wasn't alone, though. When Denali picked her up in her vehicle, Bramer had taken her 16-year-old friend Caden Mintosh with her. The youths were in a good mood and had already smoked marijuana. Cynthia joined in on the jovial laughs as well. Everything was all right as the vehicle traveled through the breathtaking scenery of Alaska. The companions, however, made the decision to pause in a parking lot next to Thunderbird Falls, which is situated in Alaska's Chugach State Park and is roughly a half-hour's drive from Anchorage. The breathtaking 60m Thunderbird waterfall is encircled by thick vegetation. The forest, the sound of the waterfall, and the fact that no one else was nearby made it the ideal spot to smoke marijuana and carry on having fun. The three pals spent time together. But then, as Denali mentioned, things became more sinister. Bramer blamed the following incidents on ineptitude and the fact that everyone was intoxicated. They made a joke about how remote the place was, saying it was as if they had been abducted and carried to a region devoid of people. In order to trick someone later, Denali said the pals agreed to stage a fictitious kidnapping, posing as though they were bound with duct tape and shooting pictures. Despite their quick realization that the story was implausible, the investigators paid close attention to the girl's account. Cynthia consented to the plan, so they chose to restrain her initially. Hoffman's ankles were taped with duct tape by Denali and Caden. Abruptly, she became agitated and insisted on being untied. Cynthia was sobbing and claiming that they truly intended to kidnap her, threatening to contact the police. It was getting scary. Denali's automobile contained prohibited chemicals. She might get into a lot of trouble if the police arrived. With the intention of frightening Hoffman into silence, Bramer drew her weapon. But before she knew what was going on, an emotional Caden took the revolver out of her hands and shot Cynthia in the head. As her companion collapsed to the ground, convulsing, Denali watched in fear. Bramer attempted to grab her phone to dial 911, but Caden made the most horrifying choice at that precise moment. He forced Cynthia, who was shackled, into the river. She was still alive then, despite having been shot. Rather than dialing 911, Denali and Caden went back to the parking lot, climbed into their cars, and drove off. The friend later texted Cynthia's father to wish for his daughter's safe return home. She did this in an effort to hide her identity and deflect attention away from Caden and herself. The youths then proceeded to another park. Cynthia's cell phone, pocketbook, clothing, identification, and the weapon used in the assault were all set on fire there. They honestly thought that by destroying these things, they would be able to escape punishment. The detectives questioned Denali and then called Caleb Leland to get his account of events. His tale was the same. The three were first making jokes. Cynthia then threatened to contact the police. The boy's memory vanished, and he didn't even recall firing the gun. Before he dumped her body into the river, he remembered just the injured girl twitching on the ground. Making sure Denali didn't go afoul of the law was Leland's top priority at the time. This 16-year-old youngster seems to have been influenced by Bramer. He obviously wanted her approval and was enamored with her. During his interrogation, Caden made it clear that he was romantically interested in Denali. Although this is obviously not a justification, it seems that Cynthia's death was motivated by her best friend. As a result, a missing persons investigation became a body search. In the meantime, police officials visited the Hoffman residence to impart the devastating news that their daughter was probably dead and that her best friend was to blame. No parent would want to learn that their child had suffered such a terrible fate. However, Tim's worst nightmare had come true because he had always been concerned about Cynthia. A young woman's body had washed up on the coast not long before Denali and Caden said Cynthia had slipped into the water. Gray duct tape was used to bind the victim. A gunshot wound to her head had occurred. The remains needed to be identified by Timothy. In fact, the body belonged to Cynthia Hoffman, his daughter, who was 19 years old. After days of looking for his child, the father was forced to confront the harsh reality. Cynthia had passed away. He had lost his cherished daughter. Denali Bramer and Caden McIntosh were charged with first-degree murder and evidence tampering following the discovery of the body. However, the probe continued. Cynthia's father understood right away that the young people's story was a fabrication. Although Timothy was devastated and found it difficult to process the terrible news, he was adamant about pursuing justice and didn't think the two friends' decision was taken at random. Denali apologized and acknowledged her mistake during one of her appearances during a preliminary court hearing, but she was more worried about her daughter's reaction when she grew up and found out the specifics of the case than she was about what she and Caden had done. Denali Dakota Sky Bramer, 18, was discovered to be a mother whose child had been placed in foster care. The defendant probably didn't care much for her own daughter and was only attempting to win sympathy. Then another young man, Caleb Allen Russell Leland, 24, was taken into custody a few days later on June 9th. He was accused of both murder and conspiracy. Two kids involved in the crime were also taken into custody, but because of their age, their identities were kept secret. We don't know anything about their role in the murder because they were handled by another agency. Investigators thoroughly examined Denali Bramer's electronic devices in order to reach to the bottom of it, and they discovered a plethora of erased data, social media correspondence, videos, and audio communications. All of this pointed to a far more sinister and profound reason for the crime committed against Cynthia Hoffman. Following the defendant's bail release, Denali sent a video message to her fans. She said that Cynthia was shot by Caden and someone else while she was being kept at gunpoint because she didn't want to pass away without testifying against the monsters who had killed her best friend. Denali now feared for her life. Bramer apparently tried to clear her name with this, but the unsettling findings didn't stop there. Upon closer inspection of the girl's phone, authorities discovered recordings and pictures of the attack on Cynthia, along with a whole series of messages between Denali and a man named Tyler. Everything appeared much less innocent than the youngsters had first stated. The communications indicated that Denali and Tyler had been in contact for a number of months. Living in Kansas, he met Bramer on a dating site and the two fell in love through a transactional relationship in which Denali sent him pictures in exchange for cash. The girl was able to purchase illegal narcotics with this money, which she subsequently sold. She also made money by offering personal services. Denali sent more than just pictures and videos to the internet, and she actually met men. In the end, one of Bramer's clients became pregnant. Her use of strong illegal substances increased as a result of the growing issues. Because of her dangerous line of work, the girl even had to carry a gun. It all began when a stranger sent a straightforward, flirtatious message. Denali was accustomed to male attention. She was one of those females that drew men in with her wild, fiery personality. She was daring and a little brazen. However, this communication was not like the others. Tyler had a lot of money, incredibly wealthy. Cynthia couldn't take her eyes off her phone when she noticed her pal laughing. Tyler, a handsome young man whose profile picture showed him standing in front of an expensive sports car, was the one she was texting. He pretended to be completely enamored with Denali. Traditional romantic manipulations. You are unique. You're unlike any girl I've ever met. I want to look after you. Many adolescent girls subconsciously harbored the fantasy of a flawless prince who could handle bullies and solve all issues. Denali had the good fortune to encounter one. Tyler promised her more than simply affection. He gave her a financial promise. First, there were only pictures. Then pictures in a bikini, and then there were going to be even fewer clothes. It wasn't free either. Denali was happy with any money, especially if it didn't require her to interact with the man in person. When Tyler referred to her as his queen and persuaded her that they had a unique, exclusive relationship, Bramer felt secure and sending pictures appeared innocuous. Naturally, Denali suspected that Tyler wasn't who he said he was. For instance, he used Hayden rather than Tyler on the dating site. She did, however, also utilize fictitious aliases online. Denali had dealt with a variety of males, so she didn't think the guy was odd, even when he began asking her to perform increasingly twisted things, and the prize continued to increase. For Bramer, it was huge sums of money that she had never seen before. The girl made every effort to win over her new acquaintance. However, Denali wasn't totally blameless either. She then feigned love in order to obtain additional funds. Since there was no Tyler, it was actually a double deceit. Instead, a 21-year-old stranger named Darren Schillmiller sat in a small bedroom in New Salisbury, Indiana, behind a computer screen. A grocery store employee, million-dollar bank accounts, luxury aircraft, and sports cars were all absent. A predatory manipulator who acts like a puppeteer plucking strings while seated in his grandparents' home. He used someone else's photo on dating apps. Of course, this was nothing new for Darren. He posed as someone else online for years, tricking women and seducing guys to see how far they would go. One woman thought she was speaking with a famous person. She also believed she had discovered her ideal career. In an attempt to carry on a cyber romance in real life, a third sent obscene pictures. Darren was a master manipulator of people. He made the long-term decision with Denali. Initially, he used romantic language to win her over, made her feel wanted and needed, hooked her on his attention, separated her from others by persuading her that no one else understood her the way he did, and then made a demand designed to test her allegiance. Nobody would ever consent to that, yet Bramer did. Darren wasn't merely making unreasonable demands or extorting money. He wanted blood this time. Denali had already become too involved in this fraud. She had been duped by a ghost. She was pushed to cross a line by the man's increasing offers of money for more explicit content. The requirement that she document the instances in which she physically restrained or even fought someone in order to impress him was among the most unsettling. Bramer consented to complete increasingly strange requirements since she was so engrossed in their relationship and, of course, the money. She occasionally recruited friends like Caden and Caleb by offering them cash in exchange for putting on a fight on camera. Denali wasn't sure what to believe when Darren offered the girl $9 million to kill someone. That is until she looked up her PayPal account and found that there was a $9 million pending transaction. She initially believed it to be a joke, but Darren persisted. He depicted the opulent lifestyle they would lead when Bramer complied with his requests. The man demanded that his fiancée demonstrate her willingness to go to whatever lengths for him. He could only trust her after that. Take the life of a stranger and get rich right away. Denali agreed, and her greed was intense. But because Darren had certain conditions, it wasn't that easy. A lady had to be the victim, and because Bramer trusted Cynthia and knew she wouldn't oppose even the most outrageous proposal, he determined it would be her. Hoffman's fate was thus predetermined long before the actual events took place. Denali needed assistance. Therefore, she wasn't going to do it by herself. She then resorted to her friends, careless youngsters seeking excitement. Caden McIntosh, 16, was the first to be recruited. Caleb Allen Russell Leland, 24, then arrived and consented to offer his vehicle in order to execute the scheme. This is how a bunch of adolescents agreed to commit a horrible crime for a large payout, for money that didn't exist, and for a stranger they most likely wouldn't have even spoken to in person. It was evident from the letters exchanged between the three conspirators that Denali had picked the spot, a secluded local where Cynthia's cries would go unheard. Bramer would message Darren once the scheme was in motion, and he would confirm the $9 million transfer after everything was finished. Or so Denali believed. Cynthia was still unaware of what was ahead at that point. She didn't realize she was going to be executed. She thought she was going on a small adventure with her best friend. She had no idea that her prime would soon come to an end. Worst of all, Denali didn't seem to feel anything. She was excited because she saw dollar signs and Cynthia was just the price to pay. No remorse, no doubts. How Denali persuaded Cynthia to allow her to tape her lips shut and tie her up is unknown. The poor girl panicked as soon as she realized the joke was gone. She screamed and struggled as Cadence started removing her clothes. Everything was captured on her phone by her best friend, who then emailed the pictures to her online boyfriend. After it was finished, the adolescents picked up the strewn-about objects from the floor, went back to the car, and drove away to get rid of the evidence. Denali didn't feel bad about what she had done at the time. To her, it was just another chore to finish in order to get a huge quantity of money and the opportunity to live a carefree life. Denali made the decision to cut ties with Darren Schillmiller after investigators revealed that the man she had stored on her phone as baby was actually a common manipulator and liar. Her affection was gone in an instant. He had deceived her into committing a violent crime, and now he was a monster. Darren Schillmiller was arrested on June 19, 2019. Although his name wasn't in the news for a long time, there were indications that this individual was dangerous even before he planned the murder from behind a computer screen in another state. Dirty nappies aroused him more than anything else. Darren sent messages to young mothers in a 600-person tiny hamlet requesting pictures of their kids. A young woman named Cheyenne met a man named Austin on a dating app about a year prior to Cynthia's murder. He appeared to be normal at first. It was a light, flirtatious, and light-hearted discussion until one day Austin requested his new friend to do him an odd favor to film her changing her kids' nappies. Cheyenne removed the user's account and blocked her since she was so shocked. The woman became extremely frightened upon discovering that Austin resided in her hometown in Indiana. Eventually, she summoned up the confidence to approach this man. It found out that Darren Schillmiller, a former classmate, was the person behind the name Austin. Cheyenne shared her experience with other women on social media. Darren sent her a message expressing regret and vowing never to request something like again when she attempted to draw attention to the problem. To get his classmate to remove the compromising post, the guy tricked her. Soon after, another dashing young man, this time going by the name Dylan, appears on the dating site. Darren contacted a possible victim under a false alias once more. Brittany, another woman, has known Darren for years. In high school, they even had a brief romantic relationship. Immediately following their breakup, Brittany forgot about the man, who was quiet, awkward, and harsh. Darren abruptly reappeared in her life in February 2019 by sending a message from his actual social media account. It appeared to be innocuous. The former classmates engaged in some conversation before Darren claimed to have a personal issue and a desire to get rid of his fetish. Everything was good. He requested that she email him a video of herself changing a baby's nappy in order to accomplish this. Brittany blocked Darren and erased the entire discussion right away. Only after Schillmiller was taken into custody did both women speak out regarding the young man's odd requests. Both their own and their children's lives were in danger. Brittany, his ex-girlfriend, disclosed that the man had been abusive to her on several occasions while they were dating. They split up for that reason. 2 days after Darren's arrest on Thursday, June 13th of 2024, the sound of motorcycles echoed through Anchorage's streets. It was a declaration, a father's last homage to his daughter whom he lost far too soon. The community rallied when Timothy Hoffman invited his motorbike buddies to accompany the hearse that was transporting Cynthia's body to the church. It was a united ride by bikers from all across the region. It was more than a simple goodbye. It was an honoring of Cynthia's soul. People banded together to help her father pursue justice. The church was packed with hundreds of people. However, Timothy didn't want their friendship to be solely focused on sadness and loss. He wanted everyone to remember the joy his daughter exuded, even though he had lost her. How she loved without holding back and laughed too loudly. How she always addressed the world with kindness despite having a unique perspective on things. It was more than just a monument. It served to preserve Cynthia's memory. Timothy made sure the farewell was full with stories, music, and laughs rather than allowing grief to take over. His late daughter would have desired that. However, the struggle for justice was far from ended. Timothy made plans for his future as others grieved because he had to appear in court against the individuals who killed his daughter at 8:30 the following morning. The father vowed to fight until the very end. His goal was to hold the monsters responsible for his child's injuries accountable. Tim promised to show up to all court appearances. Darren Schillmiller was charged in August 2019, but entered a not guilty plea. The Hoffman family submitted a huge photograph of Cynthia standing in front of a mural with wings painted behind her to the court sessions. She appeared angelic as a result. They made a conscious decision. Timothy Hoffman wanted Darren to comprehend the destruction he had caused and to see Cynthia's face and the life he had taken. Timothy pleaded with the judge to refuse Darren bail and to block his internet because he was worried that the young guy may destroy someone else's life. The father held a crucifix necklace that held the ashes of his daughter. It was all that remained of his young daughter. Darren just shook his head as Timothy spoke. The man remained steadfast. It was his love for his daughter, his anger, and his anguish. The entire courtroom was filled with those feelings. The mastermind who gave the orders, the man who fired the shot, and the girl who tricked Cynthia into falling into a trap were all seated at the defense table during the trial. Not a single seat in the room was vacant. Keeping their heads down, Denali Bramer, Caden Mintosh, and Darren Schillmiller didn't resemble the individuals they had posed as. Denali was no longer a strong monarch. Darren was no rich judge of destiny, and Caden was no daring shot. They were regular folks who had destroyed an innocent girl's life as well as their own. They now had to deal with the fallout. This was the moment Cynthia's father had been waiting for years. Timothy didn't hold back as he took the witness stand and gave Denali Bramer a direct look. He talked of his daughter's developmental delays, her altered perspective on the world, her naive faith in others, and how she regarded Denali as a friend with whom she could share all of her happiness and sorrows. Cynthia, however, had to plead with her for forgiveness. She cried, and Denali laughed while tying her up like an animal. There was complete silence in the courtroom at that moment. His car's provider, Caleb Leland, received a 30-year prison sentence for conspiring to commit murder. He stated in his closing remarks that he didn't think his pals would follow through. He did, however, take part in the plot. The shooter, Caden Mintosh, entered a guilty plea and received a 45-year jail sentence. He said he couldn't recall who fired the shot because he had blacked out. The crime's mastermind, Darren Schillmiller, was sentenced to 99 years in jail for inciting to murder and another 30 years in prison without the possibility of parole for conspiracy. The young man didn't defend himself. Cynthia's best friend, Denali Bramer, came last. In addition, she was sentenced to 30 years in jail for conspiracy and 99 years for first-degree murder. The girl sobbed and pleaded for another opportunity. However, since Cynthia would never be given another chance, the court didn't care. Hers was gone forever. Unfortunately, the Hoffman family's tragedies didn't stop there. Following the trial, Timothy made the decision to honor Cynthia with a motorbike ride on each anniversary of her passing. Only a handful of Tim's closest buddies were on the initial journey. However, a growing number of bikers joined them over time. People began to gather in support of Timothy. Every year he led the motorbike ride along a long twisting route while wearing a leather jacket with his daughter's name. The path Cynthia had previously gone to her inevitable demise was followed by the group. The purpose of the journey was to pay homage to Cynthia and express that she will always be remembered. Timothy Hoffman set off once more with 50 passengers on June 2, 2023. Breakfast at the Carousel Cafe was the first destination. After that, they rode down the trails, arriving at Thunderbird Falls in Chug State Park, where Cynthia passed away. Timothy, however, never got there. Something happened as the gang was traveling down the highway around 1:30 p.m. Hoffman's motorbike flipped after losing control and veering off the road. Both Tim and his wife, who was riding behind him, were flung onto the pavement. The bikers yelled and hurried to Timothy's aid, but he was not answering. Regretfully, the man did not survive, despite the fact that medical personnel hurried him to the hospital. Tim's wife had multiple surgeries after suffering a shattered skull and spine. Timothy struggled for 4 years to accept Cynthia's terrible destiny. He also followed her on the 4th anniversary of her passing. Tim only ever wants justice for their daughter, according to Cynthia's mother, and now they're back together. There is more to Cynthia's story than just sadness. Additionally, it serves as a reminder and caution that using the internet might be risky. Social media should unite people and be used for communication. Other Darren Schillmillers, however, are out there searching for unsuspecting victims. You can't be sure of someone's identity or authenticity when chatting with them online. Ultimately, a thug in a dim alley did not hurt Cynthia. Someone she trusted and loved took her life, and a stranger's words and pledges to her pal are to blame. Always be skeptical of everything you read and see on the internet. It's not true that everyone you call a friend is one. If something doesn't feel right, follow your gut. Thank you for watching and for being part of this true crime community. Your support means everything. Every like, comment, and share helps us continue to grow and bring more awareness to the world around us. Together, we're building a space where truth, justice, and curiosity come together to uncover the realities many choose to ignore. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe, tap the bell icon, and turn on all notifications so you never miss our latest uploads. Don't forget to like this video, share it with others, and comment below to let us know your thoughts or what kind of cases you'd like to see next. Your voice helps shape the content we create and keeps this community active and engaged. Until next time, stay safe, stay alert, and always trust your instincts. Evil doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes it hides behind a friendly smile. Keep your eyes open, protect your peace, and remember awareness is your strongest defense. It was a still night, eerily calm. The streets lay deserted, and the faint streetlights stretched long, uneasy shadows across the Connells' elegant home. Inside, Joe and Olga were settling in, ending what seemed like an ordinary day, unaware that danger was lurking just beyond their walls. Then, everything shifted in an instant. A sudden noise, a brief struggle, the atmosphere filled with terror. By the time anyone realized something terrible had happened, it was already too late. At first glance, it appeared to be a botched burglary. But as investigators delved deeper, they uncovered a far darker truth. This wasn't random, it had been meticulously planned. Someone wanted Joe and Olga dead. The question was who, and the answer would leave everyone who knew them stunned. Joseph grew up in a comfortable and close-knit family. The middle child between an older brother, John, and a younger sister, Kelly. His childhood was marked by the usual sibling rivalry and laughter. But after their parents divorced, the three grew even closer, their bond deepening into something unbreakable. They lived with their mother, who eventually found happiness again with a man who proved to be a kind and devoted stepfather. The family built a calm, fulfilling life in a friendly neighborhood. Their days were filled with work and school, but evenings were spent together gathered around the dinner table, sharing stories and laughter. Joseph, known simply as Joe to everyone, stood out for his drive and discipline, traits that shaped both his academic success and his growing career ambitions. Despite his focus and discipline, Joe had an easygoing, fun-loving personality that made him the center of attention wherever he went. From a young age, he dreamed of running his own business and carving out his own success. With sharp instincts and unwavering determination, he made that dream a reality. Partnering with his best friend, Christopher Rivers, Joe opened a machine shop and a specialty store in Tullyville. Their journey was one of persistence and grit. Two ambitious young men building something lasting from nothing. The community admired them as skilled entrepreneurs whose dedication and friendship fueled their success. For years, Joe seemed content with single life, never in a hurry to settle down. That all changed when he met Olga, a beautiful Russian woman whose charm and confidence captivated him. They met on a dating website, and their conversations quickly revealed how much they had in common and how naturally they connected. Both Joe and Olga were seasoned adults who had already weathered their share of life's challenges, which made their connection feel effortless and genuine. Olga opened up about her ongoing divorce and recent move to the United States, while Joe spoke candidly about his past relationships and future dreams. Their chemistry was immediate and undeniable, and their relationship deepened quickly. Before long, Joe realized he couldn't picture his life without her and decided to propose. Olga joyfully accepted his proposal, though there was one small hurdle. She had yet to meet Joe's family. Still, Joe was certain they would embrace her. His instincts proved right. When his family finally met Olga, they were instantly taken by her elegance, poise, and warmth. Even those who had doubted whether Joe would ever settle down were charmed, amazed that someone had finally captured his fiercely independent heart. Their romance moved at lightning speed. Joe proudly introduced Olga to everyone he knew, never missing a chance to express how deeply he adored her. Yet beneath her soft-spoken exterior burned a fierce Siberian strength. Her determination, confidence, and unshakable spirit caught people off guard. She tackled every obstacle head-on, earning admiration from all who met her. Joe, completely captivated, threw himself into planning their wedding, driven by an inexplicable sense of urgency. Neither of them could have known how fleeting their time together would be. Some lives seemed to blaze too brightly, rushing toward their fate. When the investigation began, questions poured in. In the aftermath of the attack, police scrambled to reconstruct the night's events. Witnesses, neighbors, and bystanders were interviewed, but no one had actually seen the shooting. Many, however, reported hearing a series of gunshots followed by terrified screams, and people running for cover. Several witnesses recalled hearing raised male voices arguing moments before the gunfire erupted not far from the scene. Forensic investigators recovered multiple shell casings from two separate firearms, confirming that more than one shooter had taken part in the assault. The sheer number of bullets fired pointed to a calculated, cold-blooded ambush. Survival would have been nearly impossible. It became evident that Joe and Olga had been targeted and that their killers had lain in wait for their return. Earlier that evening, the couple had been out celebrating a friend's birthday with Joe's relatives at a lively local bar. The night had been filled with laughter, dancing, and good spirits until they decided to head home around midnight. But just as they parked and began walking toward their front door, the attackers emerged from the shadows, striking with deadly precision. The investigation soon turned toward the victims' families, as detectives sat down with Joe's mother and stepfather in search of leads. They asked the usual questions. Did Joe or Olga have enemies, receive threats, or face any recent disputes? The couple was baffled. From what they knew, Joe and Olga lived peaceful, conflict-free lives. Yet the officers understood that success and happiness can often stir resentment, even when it goes unspoken. As the inquiry progressed, a surprising detail surfaced. Joe and his sister, Kelly, had a heated argument the night before his wedding. The cause being a treasured family heirloom, an ornate diamond ring valued at around $20,000. The dispute had driven a wedge between them, though those close to the family were adamant that Kelly would never have done anything violent. What deepened the mystery was that the ring was still on Olga's finger after the attack, leading detectives to question whether the earlier argument had ever truly been resolved. Adding to their suspicions, Kelly was one of the first people to appear at the crime scene that night. An odd detail, considering she lived in another neighborhood. Her sudden arrival so close to the event raised questions about timing and motive, and investigators couldn't dismiss the notion that lingering resentment might have played a part. As detectives dug into the ring's history, another layer of the story unfolded. Joe and Olga had planned to wed in the Virgin Islands, but there had been one notable snag in their preparations: the engagement ring. By family custom, the heirloom diamond was meant to be passed from mother to son before marriage. Yet, a decade earlier, the same ring had already been given to Kelly for her own wedding. Wanting to honor family tradition without sparking conflict, Joe quietly took the ring from his sister, replaced the diamonds with zirconium, and then returned it without her knowledge. He used the original stones to craft Olga's engagement ring, a clever but risky attempt to maintain peace while preserving custom. Unfortunately, the plan didn't stay secret for long. When Kelly discovered the switch, she was livid and confronted her brother. Joe brushed off her anger, insisting she was being dramatic and trying to spoil his big day. Deeply offended, Kelly refused to attend the wedding, claiming work kept her away. But she didn't stay silent. Instead, she sent Olga a veiled, sarcastic message hinting at the ring's true origin. That single act drove a wedge between the siblings, igniting a long and bitter feud marked by resentment, accusations, and unspoken hurt. Joe and Olga began their married life in the Virgin Islands, basking in the joy of their honeymoon, sailing on yachts, lounging on pristine beaches, and indulging in exquisite dinners. Financially, life couldn't have been better. Joe's business was booming, earning nearly $1 million a year. When they returned home, the couple treated themselves to a luxury Mercedes convertible worth $100,000. Yet Olga was far from content to simply enjoy the comforts of success. Intelligent, fluent in English, and well-versed in the stock market, she quickly became a driving force in Joe's growing enterprise. With her strategic insight, their client network expanded rapidly and business thrived even more. But just a week before the tragedy, something alarming happened. Their house was burglarized while both were busy at work. Jewelry and family heirlooms were taken, except, curiously, for one item. Olga had been wearing the notorious diamond ring that day, and it was the only valuable piece left untouched. When Joe and Olga returned home, they immediately sensed something was wrong. The house had been broken into. Police were called, but to everyone's surprise, there were no signs of forced entry or clear evidence left behind. With nothing stolen except valuables that seemed specifically chosen, detectives began to suspect an inside job, a theory that quickly placed Kelly in the spotlight. Some speculated that she might have arranged the burglary as payback for the ring incident. Before investigators could uncover the truth, however, a far more horrific event unfolded: the double murder of Joe and Olga. When questioned, Kelly appeared grief-stricken yet fully coerced. She willingly handed over her phone, showing text exchanges with her brother and sister-in-law. One message from Olga hinted that she suspected Kelly had something to do with the earlier break-in, but Kelly denied any connection to the crime, insisting she had nothing to hide. Though she was overwhelmed with grief, Kelly found herself under intense scrutiny from detectives who regarded her as a prime suspect. Still, the evidence failed to implicate her. Throughout multiple rounds of questioning, she remained consistent in her statements, never faltering or contradicting herself. At the funeral, her heartbreak was unmistakable. She had deeply loved her brother, and his death left a void she could hardly bear. As investigators broadened their search for answers, they began to explore alternative motives. Joe was a successful, well-known businessman, and Olga, a strikingly beautiful woman. Could envy or obsession have driven someone to commit such a crime? Was there an old grudge that had finally boiled over into violence? Those lines of inquiry quickly fell apart. Joe's past relationships had all ended peacefully, with no lingering resentment. The same was true for Olga, whose former partners had long since built new, content lives of their own. Olga had long since cut all contact with her ex-husband in Russia, making the notion of someone crossing continents for revenge highly unlikely. With that possibility dismissed, detectives pressed on in their search for potential enemies of the newlyweds, determined to uncover the truth behind the savage attack. Their investigation soon turned toward Kelly's husband, Garrett, a man known for his fierce loyalty and willingness to defend his wife at any cost. If Kelly had secretly resented her brother, could Garrett have acted on her behalf to avenge her? When brought in for questioning, Garrett appeared calm and compliant. He offered a solid alibi and steadfastly vouched for Kelly's innocence. Yet, during the interview, he made a pointed remark that raised new suspicions. He hinted that Joe's impressive financial success might not have been entirely legitimate. Garrett implied that Joe might have been entangled in criminal dealings, possibly connected to the sale of illegal substances. Detectives initially viewed his statement with doubt, but as their inquiry expanded, similar claims began surfacing from other sources. Confidential informants alleged that Joe had been running a covert operation selling steroids, quietly amassing substantial wealth. The trail of suspicion soon led investigators to Joe's close friend and longtime business partner, Christopher Rivers. Unlike others who were visibly distraught by Joe's death, Chris seemed largely unaffected. He maintained his regular work schedule, managing suppliers and clients with an unsettling composure. His detached demeanor didn't go unnoticed, prompting detectives to bring him in for questioning. When asked about his connection to the couple, Chris explained that he had been invited to the wedding festivities, but had been unable to attend because of work obligations. Chris's comments about Joe took a surprisingly harsh tone. He alleged that his longtime friend had grown increasingly corrupt over the years, losing his moral compass. Chris didn't stop there. He cast suspicion on Olga as well, claiming she wasn't as innocent as she appeared. According to him, she maintained connections to the Russian mafia and had married Joe to strengthen their foothold in the United States. If true, this could potentially explain the couple's remarkable financial prosperity. Still, detectives questioned whether Chris was speaking from knowledge or simply spreading malicious gossip. Determined to uncover the truth, they delved deeper into Joe's background. What they found was troubling. Long before meeting Olga, Joe had been arrested for illegal possession of firearms and had even served time behind bars. During his sentence, he made several new acquaintances, some with undeniable ties to the criminal underworld. As investigators followed this lead, a notorious drug dealer named Harry Cook came forward with a shocking revelation. He claimed that Chris Rivers often spoke negatively about Joe, accusing him of being deceitful with money. According to Cook, Chris confided that he and Joe were secretly running an illegal operation, selling unapproved medical substances through their auto parts business. But resentment had begun to grow. Chris believed Joe was taking more than his fair share of the profits. While Joe enjoyed a lavish lifestyle, Chris was drowning in debt. What started as bitter complaints soon took a darker turn. Cook recalled Chris joking about wanting Joe out of the picture, remarks that eventually became far more ominous. In one chilling exchange, Chris allegedly asked Cook if he would help him eliminate Joe. Disturbed by the proposal, Cook refused to take part. From that moment on, Chris Rivers was no longer seen as a heartbroken friend but as a man with a clear motive. With this revelation, detectives ramped up their scrutiny of him. Yet when questioned, Chris maintained his composure and pointed to his airtight alibi. Security footage from multiple angles confirmed he was at home when the murders occurred. Still unconvinced, investigators turned their attention to his finances. Forensic accountants combed through the company's books and found that, although the business appeared profitable, it was simultaneously bleeding money through mysterious losses. Surprisingly, none of the discrepancies pointed directly to Joe. Then came another crucial piece of information from police informants. Chris had been struggling with a severe drug addiction. In recent months, His dependence had worsened dramatically, dragging him deeper into debt and desperation. Chris's erratic behavior had escalated, leading to petty thefts and bouts of paranoia. He began confiding in friends that he believed someone was targeting him. Yet, that was only the surface of what detectives were about to uncover. Further investigation revealed that Chris had secretly been dealing illegal steroids, a fact Joe knew nothing about. Trusting his longtime friend completely, Joe never suspected that criminal operations were taking place within their shared business. While Joe's attention remained on his marriage and expanding company, resentment quietly brewed in Chris's heart. When detectives analyzed his phone records from the night of September 23rd, they made a chilling discovery. Although security footage confirmed he was home, his phone activity told a different story. The device had been used continuously throughout the night, making and receiving several calls, most of which were later deleted. Forensic experts eventually succeeded in retrieving the deleted phone data, which unveiled a shocking link. Most of the calls traced back to a man named Joshua, a former FBI informant. When interrogated, Joshua confirmed his frequent communication with Chris, but what he revealed next was far more disturbing. Chris had allegedly offered him $65,000 to have Joe killed, a proposal Joshua found too lucrative to reject. However, Joshua had no intention of carrying out the crime himself. Instead, he outsourced the task to two hired gunmen, Dominic Benson and Aaron Thompson, paying them a $5,000 advance from the money Chris had provided. Gradually, the full horror of the plot came into focus. Joe and Olga's murders were neither random nor the result of family tensions. They were the outcome of a calculated betrayal orchestrated by someone they had trusted implicitly. At first, investigators believed Chris had orchestrated the murders out of resentment and greed, wanting full control of the business. But the deeper truth was far darker. Years before Olga came into Joe's life, the two business partners had taken out a life insurance policy meant to protect their company in the event of one partner's death. The surviving partner would receive a large payout, enough to cover their debts and the mortgage on the auto shop. However, Joe's marriage to Olga changed everything. By law, the insurance payout would now go to his wife, cutting Chris out entirely. Driven by desperation and greed, Chris conceived a brutal plan to eliminate both Joe and Olga so he could claim the money for himself. His paranoia grew uncontrollable. On the night of the murders, investigators uncovered several encrypted calls between Chris and the hired assassins, revealing his mounting panic as the deadly plan unfolded. The surveillance footage that once served as Chris's alibi soon became his downfall. His jittery behavior, constant glances at his phone, and visible anxiety all pointed toward his direct involvement. As the investigation closed in, detectives located Joshua, who surrendered without resistance. Eager to lessen his sentence, he turned on Chris, revealing every detail of their deadly plot. As authorities dug deeper, an even darker truth surfaced. Chris hadn't just orchestrated the murders, he had also schemed to frame Kelly. The earlier burglary at Joe and Olga's home had been carried out by Joshua under Chris's instructions, with the stolen target being the diamond heirloom ring. By making it appear as though Kelly had taken the ring in revenge, Chris aimed to divert suspicion toward Joe's sister while he quietly positioned himself to collect the lucrative insurance payout. But Chris's greed ultimately led to his undoing. His elaborate scheme unraveled, and the full extent of his betrayal came to light. In 2014, Christopher Rivers was formally indicted on multiple charges, including 2 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony, conspiracy to commit murder, and solicitation of murder. His co-conspirators faced separate trials but were convicted around the same period. Aaron Thompson, the gunman who carried out the killings, was sentenced to 2 life terms plus 45 years. Dominic Benson, who had backed out at the final moment, was convicted of conspiracy and aiding criminals, receiving a 5-year sentence. Joshua, the intermediary who arranged the contract killing, cooperated with law enforcement in exchange for a reduced sentence. As a result, Joshua received a 5-year sentence for conspiracy to commit murder. Chris Rivers, the architect of the heinous plot, was convicted on all counts and sentenced to 2 life terms plus an additional 50 years. Joe had worked tirelessly to build a successful business, find love, and secure a bright future. Tragically, he never had the chance to enjoy the life he had created. His fate sealed by a man he had considered a trusted friend. Consumed by greed, addiction, and resentment, Chris Rivers spent years pursuing wealth, only to see it cost him his freedom. He would now spend the remainder of his life behind bars, forced to confront the full weight of his actions. If you found this case fascinating, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now we delve into the horrifying case of Holly Bramley, a young woman whose life was taken in the most brutal way imaginable. The person walking thought it was just a bag made of plastic. It was late afternoon on March 25, 2023, and the river was calm where they were. It was the kind of early spring day where the wind still felt cold. He froze as he bent down to push the package out from between the weeds. It was floating in the bag among the bushes and mud. It was something that would make them need therapy. The cops slowly made their way down to the riverbank over the next few hours. What they found stuck in tree roots and floating downstream would make national news. 224 more scary packages had been pulled from the river by the end of the search. These boxes made up a woman named Holly Bramley, who was 26 years old. She left behind her husband Nicholas Metzen, her family, and her friends. The same man she said saved her. She wrote on Instagram, "I love this crazy boy with all my heart about the same guy. I will always be by his side no matter what. Just before we continue, I'd love to know, where are you tuning in from? Whether you're watching from home, work, or on the go, drop your city or country in the comments below. It's always amazing to see how far these stories reach. And if you're enjoying this deep dive into true crime, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Now, let's get back into the case. Holly Bramley put up an Instagram picture of herself and her boyfriend on January 26, 2017. They were hugging each other in dim light. Kindly, a flower crown filter was put over her hair. She wrote, "This boy means a lot to me. He made me the person I am today. It doesn't matter what other people say. I love him." They had only been together for 3 months at the time. His name was Nicholas Metzen. She was 18 and he was 20. They met while they were both students at Boston College in Lincolnshire. Holly, who was kind and gentle and had a childlike sense of hope, fell in love. From the outside, their first few months together looked like a quick romance. She raved about how happy he made her and how safe she felt with him. She didn't care what other people thought. But there were signs even when they were happy about their new love. Holly made another post on February 4th. It said, "We've had fights and breaks, but every time we've come out stronger." She talked about how her ex-boyfriends had helped her find the right guy at the right time. They helped her find Nicholas, and she thanks them in a strange way. "I'm in a better position to start my new life," she said. "I see now that he wasn't a real friend. I'm free to leave and move on." Her family would say that this is when he first stopped talking to her. Looking back, Holly was close to all of her siblings, but her sister Sarah Jane was her favorite. All of a sudden, though, it became harder to get to her. In the past, she used to post a lot. The girl who liked to sing, laugh, and cuddle with her pets was slowly going away. Her phone calls were no longer being returned. Instead of Holly, there was a new Holly, who swore her undying love for a guy she seemed to have barely known. On February 27th, a few weeks later, she wrote another letter that said, "I love this crazy boy with all my heart. I will be there for him no matter what, and he will be there for me too." Like she thought he would, Nicholas Metzen did not stay by her side. He would finally lock all the doors, cut off all the lines of communication, and make sure that not even her mother could get to her. Holly's connection with Nicholas looked intense from the outside, but it could also be seen as normal. When they were younger, they did fight, but it looks like they also made up. But behind the scenes, things were already changing, and it looked like they were changing quickly. Holly's family says they were the first to notice. She stopped letting them see her on social media for no reason. No longer did anyone answer their calls. Nicholas either cut off their video chats or kept a close eye on them. Holly would sometimes make new Facebook accounts with fake names just to send one short message before missing again. Sarah Jane, the older sister, remembers those times. We'd have a brief chat and then the account would be disabled. Nick had Holly believed that he and she were the only ones who counted and that everyone else was against them. She kept hearing from him that her family was bad, her friends didn't get them, and that he was the only safe place in the world. This is an example of coercive control, a type of trickery in which someone slowly takes away another person's freedom until they are alone and dependent on the abuser. There were also physical attacks going on behind closed doors that were getting worse. One of Holly's brothers found out that Nicholas had a conviction for sharing sexy pictures of a former partner. Nicholas told Holly that he had only taken the blame to protect someone else when she asked him about it. She believed him, which was sad. But around this time, Holly told her mother something very scary. She told him that Nicholas had killed her hamster. He had used a mixer and the microwave, she said. She also said he hit her puppy hard. Her family was shocked and scared. They begged her to tell someone, and she did. Nicholas, on the other hand, talked her into telling the cops that she did it. The search stopped, and no one was charged. Nicholas was looked into by the RSPCA twice, but both were later thrown out because there wasn't enough proof in either case. Holly's mother, Annette, saw it for what it was, a big red flag. At the time, she told reporters, "We told her, if he can do that to animals, think of what might happen to you." By 2020, people were going after even Annette. Nicholas then started writing her letters, making sick jokes about the death of another daughter. A daughter who had died in a parachuting accident years before. He told her it wasn't a threat, but a promise that she would soon be with her. After the fact, Holly's family said they had a bad feeling that the animals weren't going to be his last victims. In Holly's last few years, the warning signs only got worse. Nicholas wouldn't let her work. She could wear what he told her. He told her what to eat. He even told her when she could take a shower. When the plague hits in 2020, they will be completely cut off from everyone else. Nicholas now stopped all calls from outside. Her family didn't have an address or phone number, so they couldn't visit or help. Both Mother Annette and Sister Sarah Jane found out that the couple had gotten married through a social media post from a friend of the pair. There was no announcement and no public wedding shots, but I did find this picture while I was scrolling. Even though it was just a small wedding, Holly found it even harder to leave. Council records show that from 2019 to 2023, the couple was frequently told they couldn't have pets in the flat. One letter from August 2020 said that Nicholas had written down that he had killed a pet rabbit, because voices in his head told him to. However, Holly stayed, even though things kept getting worse. Or what's more, she probably felt like she couldn't leave. Friends of Holly said she was happy, loving, and kind. She learned how to take care of small animals in college. Their dream was for her to have many children and raise a big family. But it was becoming less likely that this would happen. By the beginning of 2023, things were getting even worse between them. It turned out to be true that the couple was about to split up. Holly had now reported what had happened. Nicholas knew she was going to say she wanted to leave, so he wouldn't let her go. It was March 17, 2023, and Holly was seen on CCTV entering their Lincoln flat on the 14th floor of Shuttleworth House. Holly was never seen alive again. What breaks my heart even more is that Holly might have finally been ready to run away. Holly is said to have told others that she wanted to leave in the weeks before she disappeared. She told her cousin in Australia what was going on. She was the last member of her family she still talked to. Then that cousin sent a message to Sister Sarah Jane saying, "I hope Holly is okay. He made her block me now." There was change going on inside the flat at Shuttleworth House. It's possible that Holly had had enough. She might no longer believe his lies. Nicholas might have been able to feel her pulling away. He had been looking up some very scary things on Google, but we don't know what set him off. The police later found searches on his phone like, "How to get rid of a dead body. What will happen to me if my wife dies? Does God let murder go?" Then Nicholas took £50 out of Holly's account and sent it to himself. He then took her phone and social media accounts and used them to send fake texts to her family and friends. The text said that she had left him, been mean to him, and chosen to move to Manchester. He was clearly trying to hide his tracks by changing the story before anyone found out she was gone. But some people were not sure. By March 24th, someone had called the cops to say they were worried about Holly's safety. That same day, police showed up at Shuttleworth House. Nicholas met them at the door and told them Holly had left. He said she had gone with a mental health support team a few days before. He even showed a bite mark on his arm to prove that she had hurt him. He then told the cops that she might be hiding under the bed while keeping a straight face. The flat didn't lie, though. A strong smell of ammonia and bleach filled the room. There was a used saw and a towel that was stained red. The bathroom was full of stained sheets. There was a dark mark on the bedroom floor that was full of blood. Turned out to be full of Holly's DNA after all. Nicholas insisted over and over that she had only left, but the truth would come out in 24 hours. In fact, Holly's time up a whole week before the cops came, and ever since then Nicholas had lived with her body. You can see that Holly was already gone back on March 17th. Nicholas had put her in a headlock to hold her down. He was right, Holly did bite his arm, but it was only because she was so desperate to get away. He poked her at least 4 times during the fight, but it's likely more, but it would be impossible to tell after Nicholas took her to the toilet. Things got even worse. He began to take her body apart in the bathtub. There wasn't any thought put into turning himself in, and he didn't seem to feel bad about what he did. Instead, he did what he did and then put the food in bags. After that, he put those bags in the kitchen pantry and left them there in the early hours of March 25th, a week after the event. CCTV caught him getting in and out of the Shuttleworth house lift more than once. He had a backpack on and carried things to his yellow Peugeot. He wasn't doing this by himself though, which was strange. That evening, he had sent a message to Joshua Hancock, an old school friend. He gave him £100 to help him with a job. Hancock, who had autism and learning problems, didn't know what he was getting himself into when he came along. He helped Nicholas carry those bags full of body parts. The bags were then dumped 12 miles away in the river with him. This plan to hide the proof would not work for long, though. By that same evening, a walker had seen one of the bags stuck on the bank of the river. He first thought it was animal parts, maybe some meat, until he realized it was a hand. The police then sent divers to look. It wasn't long before the other bags were found after the first one. The River Witham became the center of a huge investigation into a crime. Divers searched the cloudy water. Investigators gathered a lot of evidence bags. They were able to find an amazing 224 separate pieces of Holly. But some parts, like parts of her heart, were lost and were never found. But Nicholas Metzen kept lying, even though he knew the truth was now in front of him. So, while I was correcting, I found something else. I was just looking for a picture on Nicholas' Facebook page, whose real name is Nick Metzen. In fact, he was trying to sell his car on March 22, 2023. That being said, I think he knew that this car had tied him up in some way, whether it was through forensics or CCTV. He was trying to sell the yellow Peugeot we talked about on Facebook Marketplace for £995. That was just interesting to me. Looking into it further, I haven't come across that elsewhere. However, I do believe he was aware of his mistake and needed to clean up right away. He went on to say that Holly had left on March 19th and that she had bitten him, showing the mark on his arm. He said she was insecure, used him, and was mean to him. But what was found in the flat told a very different story. A lot of bleach and cleaning tools were found by the police. They found attempts to change the decor. The bathroom looked like it had been scrubbed really hard. Red DNA had pooled and solidified under the floorboards in the bedroom when the police moved them. There would also be electronic tracks, though. Google searches, fake texts sent from Holly's accounts, and money sent from Holly's bank account to Nicholas. Nicholas was seen on CCTV moving bags to his car on March 25th. Nicholas also sent Joshua Hancock text messages offering £100 to help him move things in the middle of the night. Hancock admitted what he had done when he was asked. He told the cops that Nicholas hadn't told him what the job was. Even though he knew what was in the bags, he didn't stop. He didn't say anything. Yes, for £100. On the other hand, let's not forget that Joshua was somewhat weak. Still, a big mistake. Holly's family made a choice in the months after her life ended. They were not going to let her story become just another old news story. Their new plan was to start a movement called #ForHolly. This was done with the help of the Lincolnshire DV Specialist Team and the Lincolnshire Police. A program called Red Flags was held for 6 weeks and focused on things like being alone, being controlled, and animal abuse. They gave each other letters, a poem by Holly's mother, and information about how to help victims who are still dying in quiet. They also started to push for Holly's Law, which was a public register idea. They thought that her death could have been avoided if the animal-related red flags had been caught. Their message was clear. Holly's life was worth more than what he took from her if it saved one woman, one mother, or one daughter. Annette, Holly's mother, looked right at the man who killed her daughter in court. She told him that he had made her whole family suffer for the rest of their lives. "You didn't just steal Holly's life in March 2023, said her big sister Sarah Jane. "You took her from us years ago." The person who helped move Holly's body, Joshua Hancock, was jailed for 3 years and 3 months and was told not to hurt anyone else. Some of Holly's body parts will never be found again, and her suffering will never be undone by any punishment. People will remember Holly not only as a victim but also as the lively young woman who loved animals, adored her brothers, and longed to be a mother. Her family is still working to get Holly's Law passed, so much more than what he gave her. She earned, her mother said. She was a person before she was a victim. Nicholas Metzen was given a life sentence in jail of at least 19 years and 316 days. There was never a good reason given for what he did. If this story shocked you, be sure to like, subscribe, and let us know your thoughts below. We cover real cases that need to be remembered. Until next time, take care and stay aware.